The wolf was crying out for help, but when the man discovered the reason, he was frozen in terror. The howl pierced through the crisp mountain air of Yellowstone National Park, different from any Ethan Carter had heard in his 15 years as a forest ranger. It wasn't the usual commanding call of a wolf marking territory or rallying its pack. No, this was something else entirely, a cry for help that made his experienced heart skip a beat. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Let us know which city you're watching us from. Stay tuned. Ethan adjusted his heavy winter jacket and gripped his radio tighter, his boots crunching through the fresh snow as he changed direction to follow the sound. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the towering pines, creating an ethereal atmosphere that only enhanced the mounting tension in his chest. "Base, this is Carter," he spoke into his radio, his breath visible in the cold air. "I'm investigating unusual wolf activity in Sector 7. Something doesn't feel right." The static crackle of acknowledgement barely registered as another howl echoed through the valley, closer this time. As he crested a small ridge, Ethan's trained eyes caught movement below. There, in a small clearing, stood a magnificent alpha wolf, its silver-gray coat stark against the white snow. But something was wrong. The powerful creature was favoring its right side, its usual proud stance compromised by what appeared to be an injury. What struck Ethan most wasn't the wolf's condition, though that was concerning enough, but its behavior. In all his years of service, he'd never seen a wolf this size remain in place as a human approached. Yet there it stood, its intelligent golden eyes fixed on him with an intensity that spoke of something beyond mere animal instinct. "Easy there, big guy," Ethan murmured, slowly removing his gloves to show he meant no harm. The wolf's ears twitched at his voice, but it held its ground. Taking careful steps, Ethan closed the distance between them, his mind racing with possibilities. Wildlife behavior was his expertise, and everything about this situation defied normal patterns. The wolf's tracks in the snow told a story that made Ethan's jaw clench. There were other prints mixed in, smaller ones, cubs, and something else that made his blood run cold. Human boot prints that had no business being in this restricted area of the park. Emily Harper's words from their last staff meeting echoed in his mind. The park's lead veterinarian had warned about increased illegal activity in the northern sectors, but they'd found no concrete evidence until now. As if reading his thoughts, the wolf took a halting step toward him, then looked back over its shoulder. The message was clear as day. "Follow me." In that moment, Ethan realized he wasn't just dealing with an injured animal. He was being asked for help by a desperate parent. The discovery of additional tracks leading deeper into the forest confirmed his suspicions. Blood spots dotted the pristine snow, creating a trail that wound through the dense undergrowth. But it wasn't just the wolf's blood he was seeing. There were signs of a struggle, marks that told of resistance against something mechanical and unnatural. A gust of wind brought with it the promise of an approaching storm. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and Ethan knew his window of opportunity was closing fast. If there were cubs in danger, he needed to act quickly before the weather made any rescue attempt impossible. The alpha limped ahead, occasionally looking back to ensure Ethan was following. Their unlikely partnership formed in silence, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder and the wolf's labored breathing. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Ethan noticed the temperature dropping rapidly. The storm was moving in faster than predicted. His radio crackled to life with static-filled warnings about the approaching weather system, but Ethan knew turning back wasn't an option. He'd sworn an oath to protect the park's wildlife, and something in the wolf's eyes told him this was more than just another routine patrol. They approached a series of rocky outcrops where the forest grew denser and the terrain more treacherous. The wolf's pace quickened despite its injury, leading Ethan to a shocking discovery, a crude trap recently triggered and abandoned. The sight made his stomach turn. This wasn't just about one injured wolf. Someone was systematically targeting the park's wildlife. As they pressed on, Ethan began to hear sounds that didn't belong in this remote part of the wilderness. The wolf's behavior grew more agitated, its ears constantly swiveling to track something beyond human hearing. They were getting close to something, but what awaited them in the growing darkness remained a mystery. The last rays of sunlight were fading when they reached a small cave entrance, partially hidden by fallen trees. The wolf stopped, turning to face Ethan with an almost human-like expression of urgency. From within the cave came sounds that made Ethan's heart race, the unmistakable whimpers of wolf cubs, but also something else, something that suggested this situation was far more complex than he'd initially imagined. The cave's entrance loomed before Ethan like a dark mouth in the gathering twilight. His flashlight beam cut through the shadows, revealing ice-slicked walls and the unmistakable signs of recent activity. The alpha wolf stood beside him, its powerful presence a reminder of the unusual alliance they'd formed in the past hour. "Base, do you copy?" Ethan tried his radio again, but the storm's interference turned his words to static. He was on his own, at least for now. The wind had picked up considerably, carrying the first flurries of what promised to be a significant snowstorm. Inside the cave, his light revealed two wolf cubs huddled together in a natural alcove. Their silver-gray coats matched their parents', but their eyes held fear instead of the alpha's determined intelligence. Something was wrong with this picture. Wolf cubs shouldn't be this far from their normal den site at this time of year. As Ethan moved closer to examine the cubs, his trained eye caught details that made his heart race. These weren't just any wolf cubs, they were part of the Northern Pack, a group Emily had been studying for years. The distinctive markings around their ears were unmistakable, but the Northern Pack's territory was miles from here. What had driven them so far from their home range? The alpha's whine drew his attention to something else, a third set of tiny paw prints leading away from the cave, toward an area of the park known for its treacherous terrain. The tracks were fresh, maybe an hour old at most. In this weather, that might as well be an eternity. "I understand now," Ethan spoke softly to the alpha, who watched him with those intelligent eyes. "You've got another little one out there, don't you?" The wolf's ears perked up at his words, confirming his suspicion. But why would a cub venture out alone in these conditions? The answer came as Ethan examined the cave more closely. Hidden behind a fallen rock, he found what he was looking for, another trap, this one unsprung. The discovery painted a clearer picture. Someone had been herding the wolves, deliberately driving them from their territory using strategically placed traps. A sudden gust of wind brought new sounds. Voices carried on the storm, distant but approaching. The alpha's hackles rose, and the cubs pressed themselves deeper into their alcove. These weren't the voices of park rangers. Ethan's mind raced through his options. The third cub was out there somewhere, possibly trapped and certainly in danger. The approaching voices suggested the perpetrators were returning to check their handiwork. And now a blizzard was rolling in, threatening to erase any chance of tracking or rescue. Emily's face flashed in his mind. Her passionate speeches about protecting the park's wolf populations, her endless hours of research, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about the Northern Pack's unique family dynamics. What would she do in this situation? The answer came with another howl, distant but distinct, the missing cub. The alpha's ears swiveled toward the sound, and Ethan knew they had to move fast. But the other cubs couldn't be left behind, not with unknown threats approaching the cave. He reached for his emergency pack, pulling out the thermal blanket he kept for emergencies. The cubs watched with a mixture of fear and curiosity as he created a makeshift sling. If he was going to attempt a rescue, he'd need both hands free, and the cubs would need protection from the storm. The alpha seemed to understand his intentions, remaining surprisingly calm as Ethan carefully gathered the cubs. Their tiny bodies trembled against him, but they didn't struggle. Perhaps they sensed, as their parent did, that their survival depended on trusting this human. Just as Ethan secured the last strap of his improvised carrier, a beam of light swept across the cave's entrance. The voices were closer now, accompanied by the crunch of boots on snow. He pressed himself against the cave wall, heart pounding. The Alpha moved with silent grace, positioning itself between the entrance and Ethan. Through the howling wind, fragments of conversation reached them. "Check the northern traps first. Storm's getting worse. Worth a fortune if we can." The words confirmed Ethan's worst fears. This wasn't just about one family of wolves. It was part of a larger operation, but right now, his priority had to be saving the cubs. The third one's howl had come from the direction of Eagle's Ridge, a dangerous area, even in good weather. Making a split-second decision, Ethan reached into his pack and pulled out his emergency flare. If he could create a diversion, they might have a chance to slip away unnoticed. The Alpha watched his every move, as if understanding that their next actions would determine not just their fate, but that of the entire pack. The storm intensified as Ethan carefully navigated through the darkening forest, the Alpha wolf leading the way despite its injury. The two cubs nestled in his makeshift carrier remained surprisingly quiet, as if sensing the gravity of their situation. The beam of his flashlight caught the increasingly heavy snowfall, creating ghostly patterns in the darkness. Emily's training sessions on wolf behavior echoed in his mind. She had always emphasized the exceptional intelligence of the northern pack, their unique social bonds that went beyond typical wolf behavior. Now, experiencing it firsthand, Ethan understood why she had fought so hard to protect them. A distant howl cut through the wind, the third cub again but weaker this time. The Alpha's pace quickened, forcing Ethan to increase his speed despite the treacherous conditions. The snow was falling faster now, threatening to obscure their trail completely. Time was running out. "We're coming, little one," Ethan muttered, more to himself than the wolves. The Alpha glanced back at him, those intelligent eyes somehow conveying both gratitude and urgency. Their unlikely partnership had deepened in the past hour, transcending the usual boundaries between human and wild animal. The terrain grew more challenging as they approached Eagle's Ridge. Jagged rocks protruded from the snow like ancient teeth, and the wind howled through narrow passages created by towering cliffs. One wrong step here could mean disaster, especially in these conditions. Suddenly, the Alpha froze, ears forward, body tense. Ethan immediately stopped, trusting the wolf's superior senses. Through the storm's fury, he caught what the wolf had already detected, the sound of movement ahead, but not the natural kind, something mechanical. They crept forward cautiously, using the growing darkness and swirling snow as cover. The Alpha led them to a small clearing bordered by steep rocks. There, partially hidden by fresh snow, they found what they were looking for. Another trap, and beside it, tracks that made Ethan's heart race. The third cub had been here recently, but something else caught his attention. The trap wasn't alone. It was part of a carefully planned network. Looking closer, Ethan discovered small markers in the snow, the kind used to map locations. This wasn't random poaching. It was a systematic operation targeting the park's wolf populations. The Alpha's low growl brought him back to their immediate concern. The wolf was staring intently at a narrow crevice between two rock faces. As Ethan directed his flashlight beam toward it, he caught a glimpse of movement. A small silver-gray form huddled against the stone. The third cub was alive, but trapped, its back leg caught in another device hidden by the snow. The sight filled Ethan with both relief and anger. Relief that they'd found the cub alive, anger at the calculated cruelty of those responsible. As he assessed the situation, Ethan became aware of a new sound carried on the wind, voices approaching from multiple directions. The poachers had split up, presumably to check their trap network before the storm made it impossible. They were about to be caught between multiple groups of criminals in deteriorating weather conditions. The cubs in his carrier stirred uneasily, picking up on the tension. The Alpha moved closer to Ethan, its injured body positioned protectively between him and the approaching danger. Despite its own pain, the wolf's first instinct was still to protect its family. Ethan quickly evaluated their options. The crevice offered some protection, but it could also become a trap itself if they were discovered. The storm, while dangerous, might provide the cover they needed to escape, if they could free the trapped cub quickly enough. His radio crackled unexpectedly, making him jump. Through the static, he caught fragments of Emily's voice. "Storm intensifying, all rangers, return to base." The message was breaking up, but its meaning was clear. Conditions were becoming too dangerous even for search and rescue operations. But Ethan couldn't leave, not now. The trapped cub whimpered softly, its eyes reflecting the same trust he'd seen in the Alphas. These wolves had chosen to trust him, defying their natural instincts in a desperate bid for help. He wouldn't betray that trust. Carefully setting down the carrier with the two cubs, Ethan pulled out his multi-tool. The Alpha watched intently as he began working on the trap, its breath visible in the beam of his flashlight. The wind howled louder, driving snow and ice horizontally through the air, but in their small shelter time seemed to slow down. The wind whipped mercilessly around them as Ethan worked to free the trapped cub, his fingers growing numb despite his thermal gloves. The Alpha remained vigilant, its ears constantly swiveling to track the approaching voices that were becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish from the storm's howl. Emily's voice crackled through the radio again, stronger this time. "Ethan, if you're receiving this, conditions are deteriorating rapidly. All rangers are ordered back to base immediately." He wished he could tell her what he'd discovered, not just about the poachers, but about the extraordinary behavior of these wolves. Emily had always insisted there was more to the northern pack than they understood. The trapped cub watched him work with surprising calmness, as if understanding that this human's presence meant salvation rather than threat. Its trust reminded Ethan of his first days at Yellowstone, when Emily had taken him under her wing, teaching him that true wildlife conservation required more than just following protocols. It demanded understanding and respect for the complex social structures of the park's inhabitants. As he carefully manipulated the trap's mechanism, Ethan's trained eye noticed something unusual about its design. These weren't standard traps. They were custom-made, sophisticated devices that would be difficult to trace. Whoever was behind this operation had resources and planning that went beyond ordinary poaching. A sudden movement from the Alpha caught his attention. The wolf's posture had changed, its body language signaling immediate danger. Through the swirling snow, flashlight beams appeared, moving in a search pattern that would soon discover their location. The poachers were methodically checking each trap site, undeterred by the worsening weather. The two cubs in the carrier remained remarkably quiet, but their tiny bodies trembled with cold and fear. Ethan knew he needed to act fast. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and even wolves couldn't endure these conditions indefinitely. The Alpha's injury wasn't helping either. The proud creature was clearly struggling to maintain its protective stance. Working with renewed urgency, Ethan finally felt the trap's mechanism give way. The third cub pulled its leg free, immediately trying to stand but stumbling from cold and exhaustion. The Alpha moved forward, gently nuzzling its offspring while keeping one eye on the approaching lights. Ethan's relief was short-lived as he realized their next challenge. They were effectively trapped between the steep rock faces and the approaching poachers, with the storm limiting visibility to mere feet. The cubs were too young to navigate this terrain on their own, especially in these conditions, and the Alpha's injury made it impossible for it to carry them. A memory flashed through his mind, Emily's detailed maps of the park's cave systems. She had spent years documenting the underground networks that crisscrossed this region, insisting they could be crucial for wildlife protection. "Nature always provides a way," she'd told him. We just have to be observant enough to find it. Scanning the rock face with his flashlight, Ethan noticed something, a dark opening partially hidden by snow-covered vegetation. It wasn't marked on any official park maps, but Emily's research had suggested the existence of unmapped passages in this area. The Alpha seemed to understand his intention, moving toward the opening and sniffing the air. Its behavior confirmed Ethan's hope. This wasn't just a shallow cave, but potentially part of a larger network that could offer them escape. The voices were getting closer, accompanied by the sound of equipment being moved through the snow. Ethan caught fragments of conversation that made his blood run cold. "Check every crevice. Can't afford to lose any more. Buyer waiting." Making a quick decision, Ethan gathered the freed cub into his arms, alongside the carrier holding its siblings. The added weight made movement difficult, but there was no alternative. The Alpha took the lead, limping but determined, as they made their way toward the hidden opening. Just as they reached the cave entrance, a beam of light swept across their previous location. Through the storm's fury, Ethan heard voices expressing frustration at finding an empty trap. They had escaped discovery by mere seconds. The cave opening was narrow but navigable. As they moved deeper inside, the howling of the wind began to fade, replaced by the sound of dripping water and their own careful movements. The Alpha moved with purpose, as if familiar with these hidden passages. Ethan realized that perhaps the wolves had used these caves before, another secret of their sophisticated survival strategies that Emily had hypothesized but never been able to prove. The darkness of the cave enveloped them like a protective blanket, broken only by the beam of Ethan's flashlight. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, creating an ethereal rhythm that echoed through the underground passages. The alpha wolf moved with surprising confidence, its paws finding secure footing despite its injury. The three cubs had settled into an uneasy quiet, their small bodies pressed together for warmth in the makeshift carrier. The rescued cub, though exhausted, kept its eyes fixed on its parent, as if drawing strength from the alpha's unwavering determination. As they ventured deeper into the cave system, Ethan's mind returned to his conversations with Emily about the park's underground geography. She had spent countless hours mapping these networks, convinced they held secrets about the wolves' survival strategies. "The Northern Pack isn't just special because of their intelligence," she had told him once. "They understand this landscape in ways we're only beginning to grasp." The passage gradually widened, opening into a larger chamber that showed signs of regular wolf activity. Scratch marks on the walls, well-worn paths in the earth. This wasn't just a random cave, but an established safe haven. The alpha's behavior changed subtly, becoming more relaxed despite its injury, suggesting they had reached familiar territory. Ethan's radio crackled to life unexpectedly, the sound amplified by the cave walls. Emily's voice came through clearer than before. "All units, be advised. We found evidence of unauthorized activity in sectors 5 through 8. Multiple trap sites discovered. Exercise extreme caution." The message confirmed what Ethan had already pieced together, but there was more to this situation than even Emily realized. The sophisticated traps, the coordinated search patterns of the poachers, the carefully mapped locations. This was a professional operation with resources and insider knowledge. A distant rumble reminded them that the storm was still raging outside. The temperature in the cave was stable, offering refuge from the brutal weather, but Ethan knew they couldn't stay here indefinitely. The alpha needed medical attention, and the cubs required proper care after their ordeal. As he set down the carrier to give the cubs and himself a brief rest, Ethan noticed something unusual about the chamber. His flashlight beam revealed markings on the walls that didn't look natural, subtle but deliberate scratches that formed distinct patterns. Emily had theorized about the Northern Pack's ability to mark and remember routes, but this was the first concrete evidence he'd seen. The alpha limped to a specific section of the wall, pawing at the ground beneath it. Intrigued, Ethan directed his light toward the area. Half buried in the soil, he found something that made his heart race. A small, weathered notebook, its pages filled with handwritten notes and detailed maps of the park's northern section. As he carefully examined the contents, the pieces began falling into place. The notebook contained information about wolf pack movements, den locations, and migration patterns, the kind of detailed knowledge that would be invaluable to poachers targeting specific animals. But how had it ended up here? The Alpha watched him intently as he photographed each page with his phone, its intelligent eyes seeming to understand the significance of the discovery. The wolf's behavior throughout this ordeal suggested a level of strategic thinking that went beyond mere animal instinct. Suddenly, the cubs became agitated, their ears perking up at a sound too faint for human hearing. The Alpha's posture changed immediately, its body tensing as it faced one of the tunnel entrances. Something or someone was moving through the cave system. Ethan quickly secured the notebook in his pack and gathered the cubs, his mind racing through possible escape routes. The chamber had 3 exits besides the one they'd entered through, but in the darkness of the cave system, choosing the wrong path could lead them straight into danger. The Alpha's reaction provided the answer. The wolf moved purposefully toward the rightmost tunnel, stopping to ensure Ethan was following. Throughout their journey, the wolf's instincts had proven uncannily accurate. This was no time to start doubting their partnership. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Ethan caught fragments of echoing voices from behind them. The poachers had found the cave entrance, probably following their tracks in the snow, but their pursuers didn't have what Ethan and the wolves had: intimate knowledge of these underground passages and a discovered notebook that might hold the key to understanding the full scope of the threat facing Yellowstone's wolves. The tunnel twisted deeper into the earth, the beam of Ethan's flashlight revealing crystalline formations that sparkled like stars in the darkness. The Alpha moved with increasing urgency, its injured gait becoming more pronounced with each step, yet its determination never wavered. Behind them, the echoes of pursuit grew fainter, suggesting their hunters had chosen a different path in the maze-like cave system. The cubs remained remarkably quiet in their carrier, their eyes reflecting the flashlight's beam like tiny amber jewels. The rescued cub, though still weak from its ordeal, had settled into a rhythm of movement that matched its siblings. Their unity reminded Ethan of Emily's research on wolf pack dynamics, how each member, no matter how young, played a crucial role in the family's survival. As they navigated the underground labyrinth, Ethan's mind returned to the notebook he'd discovered. The detailed observations it contained showed an intimate knowledge of the park's wolf populations that went beyond official research. Someone had been studying these animals with an ulterior motive, using that information to orchestrate this sophisticated trapping operation. The Alpha suddenly stopped, its ears swiveling toward a sound that Ethan couldn't detect. The wolf's behavior had saved them more than once tonight, and he didn't hesitate to follow its lead. They pressed themselves against the tunnel wall just as a distant beam of light swept through an intersecting passage ahead. In the tense silence that followed, Ethan's radio came to life again, Emily's voice cutting through the static. "Attention all units. Park entrance logs show unauthorized vehicle activity near the North Gate 3 weeks ago, cross-referencing with recent wildlife disturbance patterns." The transmission faded before she could finish, but the message was clear. Emily was piecing together the same puzzle from a different angle. The Alpha nudged Ethan's leg, drawing his attention to a narrow fissure in the cave wall. At first glance, it appeared too small for passage, but as he directed his light toward it, he noticed how the opening widened just beyond the entrance. The wolf's knowledge of these hidden routes was remarkable, confirming Emily's theories about the Northern Pack's advanced spatial awareness. Water dripped steadily as they squeezed through the fissure, emerging into a chamber that took Ethan's breath away. The ceiling soared above them, decorated with delicate stalactites that caught and scattered his flashlight's beam. But it wasn't the natural beauty that made him pause. It was the evidence of regular wolf activity throughout the space. This was more than just a temporary shelter. It was a gathering place. Worn paths crisscrossed the chamber floor, and scattered bones spoke of successful hunts shared among pack members. The Alpha's demeanor changed subtly, becoming more relaxed despite its injury. They had reached a safe haven, a place known only to the wolves. Ethan carefully set down the carrier, allowing the cubs to stretch their legs in the relative safety of the chamber. As they explored their surroundings, he took the opportunity to examine the Alpha's injury more closely. The wound was serious, but not life-threatening, if they could get proper medical attention soon. The notebook's weight in his pack seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. Its pages held information that could help protect the park's wolves, but they also represented a dangerous liability. Someone had invested considerable time and resources into gathering that intelligence, and they wouldn't give up easily. A sudden change in air pressure made the Alpha's fur bristle. Something was happening above ground. The storm was intensifying. The cave system had protected them from the worst of the weather, but it also meant they were effectively trapped until conditions improved. Ethan's thoughts turned to Emily again. She would be coordinating the park's response to both the storm and the poaching threat, probably worried sick about his radio silence. He knew she would understand his decision to stay with the wolves. She had always emphasized that true conservation meant being there for the animals when they needed help most. The Alpha's attention suddenly focused on one of the chamber's exits, its body language signaling not danger, but recognition. A distant wolf howl echoed through the passages, barely audible, but distinct. The cubs perked up at the sound, and even in the dim light, Ethan could see the Alpha's relief. Help was coming, but whether it would arrive before their pursuers found them remained to be seen. The distant howl grew stronger, echoing through the underground passages like a beacon of hope. The Alpha responded with a low, careful call of its own, mindful of the poachers who might still be searching the cave system. The cubs huddled closer together, their small bodies trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. Ethan checked his watch. They'd been underground for nearly 2 hours. The storm above would have covered their tracks by now, but it also meant any rescue attempt would be significantly more challenging. The radio at his belt remained stubbornly silent, the cave walls blocking most signals from reaching them this deep underground. The notebook he'd discovered felt like a burning secret in his pack. Its pages contained more than just observations about wolf behavior. They revealed a systematic study of the park's security protocols, patrol schedules, and blind spots. Someone with inside access had been laying the groundwork for this operation for months, perhaps years. Emily's voice suddenly crackled through the radio, stronger than before. Thermal imaging shows multiple heat signatures in the northern cave system, rescue teams mobilizing despite weather conditions. The transmission gave him hope, but it also meant they needed to move carefully. Those heat signatures could belong to either rescuers or pursuers. The Alpha's ears suddenly perked up, its body tensing in a way that Ethan had learned to trust. Through the complex network of tunnels came a sound that made his blood freeze. Voices, closer than before, discussing search patterns and exit points. The poachers hadn't given up. They were methodically searching every branch of the cave system. Making a quick decision, Ethan gathered the cubs and their carrier. The Alpha led them toward a narrow passage that sloped upward, its walls slick with moisture from the storm above. The injured wolf moved with renewed purpose, drawn by the howls that continued to echo through the caverns. As they climbed, Ethan noticed something peculiar about the passage walls. Unlike the natural formations in other parts of the cave, these surfaces showed signs of deliberate modification, subtle marks that suggested this route had been used and maintained over generations. Emily's theories about the Northern Pack's cultural knowledge suddenly seemed more plausible than ever. The cubs remained surprisingly cooperative, as if understanding the gravity of their situation. The rescued cub, though still favoring its previously trapped leg, kept pace with its siblings. Their resilience reminded Ethan of Emily's observations about wolf pack dynamics, how adversity often strengthened family bonds rather than breaking them. A distant rumble of thunder penetrated even this deep underground, reminding them of the fierce storm still raging above. The temperature had dropped noticeably as they climbed higher, and moisture dripped steadily from the ceiling. They were getting closer to the surface, but with that proximity came increased risk. The Alpha stopped abruptly, its nose twitching at a change in the air current. Ahead, the passage split into 3 branches. 2 showed signs of recent use, scuff marks and disturbed earth that could have been left by their pursuers. The third, barely visible behind a fallen rock formation, seemed undisturbed. Before Ethan could contemplate their options, his radio sparked to life. Emily's voice came through in fragments. Found evidence of tampering with security systems. Inside help confirmed. Trust no one outside core team. The message cut off abruptly, leaving Ethan with a chilling realization. This wasn't just about poaching anymore. They were dealing with a sophisticated operation that had compromised the park's own protection measures. The Alpha's behavior changed subtly, its attention fixed on the hidden third passage. Despite its injury, the wolf's movements remained decisive, guided by an understanding of these caves that went beyond mere instinct. The continued howls from above seemed to confirm their chosen route, growing clearer with each careful step forward. Ethan checked his remaining supplies as they moved. His flashlight batteries were holding steady, but the cold was becoming a serious concern. The cubs had each other for warmth, but the Alpha's injury and exertion made it vulnerable to the dropping temperature. They needed to find a way out soon, before the cold or their pursuers caught up with them. The hidden passage twisted upward through the rock like a natural chimney, its walls glistening with ice crystals that caught Ethan's flashlight beam. The Alpha wolf moved with increasing difficulty, its injury clearly taking its toll, yet its determination never wavered. The howls from above had grown stronger, carrying notes of urgency that even Ethan's human ears could detect. The cubs huddled closer in their carrier as the temperature continued to drop. The rescued cub, though still weak from its ordeal, had found new strength in the presence of its siblings. Their bond reminded Ethan of Emily's research papers on wolf pack dynamics, how the strongest wolves would often risk everything to protect their most vulnerable family members. His radio crackled unexpectedly, Emily's voice cutting through layers of rock. Multiple teams converging on northern sector, unusual wolf activity reported. Possible pack gathering. The transmission confirmed what the Alpha had sensed. Help was coming, but so were complications. A gathering of wolves would draw attention, both wanted and unwanted. The notebook in his pack seemed heavier with each step, its pages containing information that could expose not just the poaching operation, but a deeper conspiracy within the park's protection systems. The detailed notes suggested months of preparation, careful study of patrol patterns, and knowledge that could only come from someone with privileged access. Suddenly, the Alpha froze, its ears swiveling toward a sound that echoed through the passage. Ethan killed his flashlight immediately, plunging them into complete darkness. In the silence that followed, he could hear voices carrying through the cave's natural acoustics. Their pursuers had found another entrance to the passage network. The wolf's body language changed, suggesting not just danger but recognition. These weren't random poachers. They knew exactly what they were doing and where to look. The Alpha pressed closer to Ethan, as if trying to shield both him and the cubs from discovery. The trust between them had evolved into something extraordinary, transcending the natural barriers between human and wild animal. Emily's theories about the Northern Pack's intelligence had always seemed ambitious to many of her colleagues, but Ethan was witnessing proof of capabilities that went beyond conventional understanding. The wolves weren't just surviving in these caves, they were using them strategically, passing knowledge through generations. A blast of cold air from above brought both promise and warning. They were nearing an exit, but the storm's intensity had increased. The howls were clearer now, coming from multiple directions. The pack was coordinating, something Emily had documented, but few had witnessed firsthand. The Alpha's injury was becoming more pronounced, its breathing labored from the climb. Yet it continued to lead, stopping occasionally to ensure Ethan and the cubs were managing the increasingly challenging terrain. The wolf's behavior exhibited a level of awareness and consideration that challenged everything Ethan thought he knew about these animals. His phone's screen lit up unexpectedly. A text message had somehow gotten through. Emily. Security footage shows unauthorized access to research databases 3 months ago. Trust your instincts. The wolves know. The message confirmed his growing suspicions about the sophistication of the operation they'd stumbled upon. The passage widened slightly, opening into a small chamber with multiple exits. Ice formations hung from the ceiling like crystal daggers, creating natural prisms in the dim light. The Alpha moved purposefully toward one of the openings, but stopped abruptly, hackles rising. Through another tunnel came the unmistakable sound of equipment being moved. Their pursuers were systematically searching every branch of the cave system. Ethan checked his remaining supplies while the cubs rested briefly. His emergency kit contained basic first aid supplies, but nothing substantial enough to treat the Alpha's worsening condition. The wolf needed professional care, the kind that only Emily could provide with her specialized knowledge of wolf physiology. The howls above changed tone, carrying a new urgency that made the Alpha's ears prick forward. The wolf's reaction suggested more than just recognition. It was receiving specific information. Emily had always insisted that wolf vocalizations contained complex messages, and now Ethan was witnessing it firsthand. As they prepared to move again, Ethan noticed something odd about the chamber's layout. The ice formations weren't random. They followed a pattern that matched markings he'd seen on the cave walls earlier. Nature alone couldn't account for such consistency. The Northern Pack hadn't just found these caves. They had learned to read and use their natural features in ways humans were only beginning to understand. The storm's fury penetrated even the depths of the cave system, its distant roar mixing with the increasingly urgent wolf calls from above. The Alpha moved with painful determination, each step a testament to its unwavering commitment to protect its family. The cubs, sensing their parents' struggle, remained extraordinarily quiet in their carrier, their eyes reflecting a wisdom beyond their years. Emily's last radio transmission echoed in Ethan's mind. Multiple park protocols compromised, evidence of long-term surveillance. Be extremely cautious. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture more complex than simple poaching. The notebook's detailed contents suggested an operation that had been months, perhaps years, in the planning. The Alpha suddenly stopped, its ears forward, body tense. Through the maze of tunnels came the sound of voices closer than before, discussing search patterns with disturbing familiarity. Check the marked passages first. They always use the same routes. The words confirmed Ethan's worst fears. These weren't just poachers, but people with intimate knowledge of the wolves' behavior patterns. A particularly strong gust of wind brought not just the storm's voice, but also new wolf calls, different from the previous ones. The Alpha's reaction was immediate, its posture changing from defensive to alert. Something was happening above ground, something that made even the injured wolf want to hurry despite its worsening condition. Ethan's phone lit up again. Another message from Emily had somehow penetrated the rock. Thermal imaging shows multiple wolf packs converging. Never seen anything like this. The northern pack is calling for help. The message aligned with everything they were experiencing underground. The wolves weren't just running, they were executing a coordinated response. The passage they followed opened into a chamber that took Ethan's breath away. Unlike the previous caves, this one showed clear signs of regular use, not just by wolves, but by generations of them. The walls bore marking patterns that matched notes he'd seen in the mysterious notebook, but these were older, much older than the recent observations. The cubs stirred in their carrier, responding to something in the air that Ethan's human senses couldn't detect. The rescued cub, though still favoring its injured leg, seemed more alert, its tiny head swiveling towards sounds that echoed through the cave system. Their behavior suggested they weren't just fleeing, they were following a predetermined route. Emily's research about wolf intelligence and social structures had often been met with skepticism by her colleagues. They don't just survive, she would argue. They plan, they teach, they preserve knowledge. Looking at the cave chamber's complex layout and the wolves' confident navigation of it, Ethan realized she had only scratched the surface of their capabilities. The alpha's breathing had become more labored, its injury clearly taking a severe toll, yet it continued to guide them, stopping periodically to ensure they were following the safest path. The wolf's dedication went beyond instinct. It was demonstrating a level of strategic thinking that aligned perfectly with Emily's most controversial theories about wolf consciousness. A distant crash echoed through the caves, followed by voices raised in frustration. Their pursuers had encountered some kind of obstacle, but the brief respite came with a warning. They were systematically eliminating escape routes, driving them towards something or someone. The notebook's weight in Ethan's pack served as a constant reminder of what was at stake. Its pages didn't just document wolf behavior. They revealed a calculated effort to exploit the very qualities that made the northern pack special. Their intelligence, their social bonds, their traditional knowledge passed down through generations. The chamber's far wall presented them with 3 possible exits. 2 showed signs of recent human activity. Scuff marks from boots disturbed dust patterns. The third, partially hidden behind ancient ice formations, remained untouched. The Alpha moved toward this hidden path without hesitation, its movement suggesting familiarity with a route that didn't appear in any official park documentation. As they prepared to enter this new passage, Ethan's radio captured a fragment of conversation from the park's emergency channel. Unprecedented wolf activity, multiple packs coordinating, Emily's theories confirmed. The transmission cut off abruptly, but its implications were clear. What they were witnessing wasn't just about survival, it was about something larger, something that challenged everything they thought they knew about these remarkable animals. The hidden passage led them upward at a steeper angle, ice-slicked walls reflecting Ethan's flashlight in crystalline patterns. The air grew noticeably colder, carrying hints of the storm still raging above. The alpha wolf, despite its worsening condition, maintained its determined pace, driven by something more urgent than just escape. Suddenly, Ethan's radio crackled to life with unprecedented clarity. Emily's voice cut through the static. "All units, we've identified the security breach. Former park researcher Marcus Bennett accessed restricted files 3 months ago. He's been documenting the Northern Pack's secret routes for years. Consider him dangerous. He knows the wolves better than anyone except..." The transmission ended abruptly, but the revelation hit Ethan like a physical blow. Marcus Bennett, Emily's former research partner, the man who had helped establish many of the park's current wildlife protection protocols. The sophistication of the poaching operation suddenly made terrible sense. The notebook in Ethan's pack carried new weight with this knowledge. The detailed observations, the intimate understanding of wolf behavior, the systematic mapping of their hidden pathways. All of it bore the hallmarks of someone who had once been dedicated to protecting these animals. The Alpha's ears suddenly pricked forward, its body language shifting from cautious to alert. The howls from above had changed character, carrying messages that even Ethan's human ears could tell were different from before. The cubs stirred in their carrier, responding to the calls with tiny whimpers of recognition. Through the maze of passages, new sounds emerged, the movement of multiple large bodies, the soft pad of paws on stone. The Alpha's posture relaxed slightly, though it maintained its protective stance near Ethan and the cubs. They weren't alone in these caves anymore, but these new presences weren't threats. A massive grey wolf emerged from a connecting tunnel, followed by several others. The northern pack had come for its own, navigating the cave system with practiced ease. Their appearance confirmed Emily's research about wolf pack intelligence and social cooperation. This wasn't just a random rescue, it was a coordinated effort. Ethan's phone lit up with another message from Emily. Thermal imaging shows more than 20 wolves converging on your location. Multiple packs working together. Marcus never understood this part. They're not just family groups, they're communities. Get that evidence to the surface. We're closing in on their operation. The Alpha greeting its pack members with subtle movements, communicating in ways that went beyond simple animal interaction. The newly arrived wolves positioned themselves strategically around Ethan and the cubs, creating a living barrier of protection. Their behavior demonstrated a level of tactical thinking that would have amazed even Emily. Through the stone walls came the distant sound of frustrated voices. The poachers, led by Marcus, had discovered their quarry had vanished into passages they couldn't access. Their pursuit had been orchestrated with professional precision, but they hadn't counted on the wolves' ability to coordinate on this scale. The notebook contained more than just observations about wolf behavior. Among its pages, Ethan had noticed calculations about profit margins, contact information for buyers, and details about sophisticated animal trafficking networks. Marcus hadn't just betrayed the park's trust. He had systematically exploited his knowledge of wolf behavior to create a highly profitable, illegal operation. The Alpha's breathing had become more labored, the toll of its injury finally catching up with its heroic efforts. Yet it maintained its position at the head of the group, leading them toward what Ethan now realized was more than just an escape route. The wolves were taking them to something specific, something they wanted him to see. The passage widened into a chamber unlike any they'd encountered before. Ancient markings covered the walls, not human markings, but patterns left by generations of wolves. This was more than a den or a shelter. It was a testament to the Northern Pack's true nature as keepers of ancient knowledge, protectors of traditions that humans like Marcus had tried to exploit. Emily's last transmission had hinted at something bigger than just wolf behavior. The Northern Pack wasn't just special because of their intelligence. They were guardians of something more fundamental, something about the true relationship between humans and wildlife. As Ethan stood in that hidden chamber, surrounded by wolves who had chosen to trust him, he began to understand what Emily had been trying to prove all along. The ancient chamber pulsed with an energy that seemed to emanate from the very rocks themselves. Ethan's flashlight revealed more of the distinctive markings on the walls, patterns that told a story of generations of wolves using these caves, not just for shelter, but for something far more significant. The Alpha, despite its exhaustion, stood proudly among its pack members, as if drawing strength from this sacred space. Emily's voice broke through on the radio with surprising clarity. "Ethan, if you're receiving this, we've found Marcus's base camp. Years of research documents, evidence of an international trafficking network. But there's something else. He missed the biggest discovery of all. The Northern Pack isn't just unique. They're guardians of something we never understood. The newly arrived wolves moved with purpose through the chamber, some examining the cubs, while others took up defensive positions near the various entrances. Their coordination went beyond mere instinct or training. They were demonstrating a level of social organization that Emily had theorized but never been able to prove conclusively. Ethan's phone illuminated with another message. Security teams are closing in on all cave exits. Marcus and his team are trapped, but you need to document everything you're seeing. The chamber you're in, it's not on any official map. The wolves have been protecting these places for generations. The notebook in his pack now seemed like both evidence and vindication. Marcus had documented the wolves' behaviors meticulously, but he had fundamentally misunderstood what he was observing. He had seen their intelligence as something to exploit, missing the deeper significance of their social structures and traditions. The alpha limped to a specific section of the chamber wall, pawing at the ground beneath a series of particularly intricate markings. The other wolves gathered around, their behavior suggesting this was more than just random activity. They were showing him something, continuing a tradition of trust that went back further than any human record. Emily's research notes, which Ethan had studied extensively during his training, had hinted at this possibility. The Northern Pack exhibits behaviors that suggest cultural transmission of knowledge, she had written. They're not just surviving in these mountains, they're maintaining something, a legacy we're only beginning to glimpse. The cubs, still secure in their carrier, had grown notably calmer in this chamber. The rescued cub, though injured, seemed to draw strength from the presence of the pack and the energy of this special place. Their reaction supported Emily's theories about inherited memory and learned behavior being passed down through generations. Through the stone walls came the sounds of the storm above, but also something else. The coordinated movements of rescue teams converging on the cave system. Emily's voice crackled through again, multiple arrests in progress. Marcus's entire operation is being shut down. But Ethan, what you're seeing right now, that's the real story. The wolves chose to trust you for a reason. The Alpha's pack members had positioned themselves in a formation that couldn't be coincidental. They were creating a path, guiding Ethan towards something specific. Their behavior suggested this wasn't just about escaping danger. They were intentionally sharing something that had been hidden from human eyes for generations. As Ethan followed their lead, his flashlight beam revealed something extraordinary beneath years of mineral deposits, ancient human markings intertwined with wolf tracks, preserved in the cave's natural concrete. This chamber wasn't just a wolf sanctuary. It was evidence of an ancient partnership between humans and wolves, a relationship that predated modern civilization. The notebook's detailed observations took on new meaning in light of this discovery. Marcus had documented the wolves' behaviors without understanding their true significance. These weren't just intelligent animals using caves for shelter. They were the custodians of an ancient pact, a relationship between species that modern humanity had forgotten. Emily's latest message confirmed what Ethan was witnessing. The thermal imaging shows something unprecedented. Wolf packs from across the park are converging on your location. They're not just cooperating, they're performing something we've never seen before. Document everything, Ethan. This changes our entire understanding of wolf society. The chamber's ancient markings seem to come alive in the interplay of shadows and light, telling a story that stretched back through centuries. The alpha wolf, though weakened by its injury, maintained its position at the center of an ever-growing gathering of its kind. The pack's numbers had swelled as more wolves arrived through the hidden passages, each group moving with purposeful precision. Emily's voice broke through the radio's static with renewed urgency. "Ethan, Marcus's files reveal something extraordinary. The Northern Pack's unusual behavior isn't just advanced intelligence, it's inherited knowledge. They've been protecting these caves, these markings, for generations. What you're seeing right now hasn't been witnessed by humans in over a century. The wolves had arranged themselves in a formation that couldn't be random, creating concentric circles around Ethan and the Alpha. The cubs, still secure in their carrier, had fallen into an almost reverent silence, as if sensing the significance of what was unfolding around them. The rescued cub, despite its injury, remained alert and focused on the proceedings. Ethan's phone illuminated with another message from Emily. Park security has contained the situation above ground. Marcus and his team are in custody, but that's not the real story anymore. The thermal imaging is showing something unprecedented. Wolf packs from across the park are still arriving. They're not just gathering, they're performing some kind of ritual. The notebook in Ethan's pack now felt like a twisted mirror of what he was witnessing. Where Marcus had seen patterns to exploit, he had missed the profound truth. These wolves weren't just subjects to be studied, but guardians of an ancient partnership between humans and wildlife that had been lost to time. The Alpha's breathing had steadied somewhat, as if drawing strength from the gathering of its kind. With careful movements, it led Ethan to a specific section of the chamber wall where the markings were most concentrated. Other wolves moved aside, creating a path while maintaining their circular formation. Emily's research had always hinted at something deeper in wolf behavior. Their social structures aren't just about survival, she had written. There's a cultural component we're missing, something passed down through generations that goes beyond mere instinct or learned behavior. The cubs watched with unusual intensity as the Alpha placed its paw against one of the ancient markings. The gesture seemed to trigger a response among the gathered wolves, a low, harmonious howl that started with the inner circle and spread outward, each group joining in perfect synchronization. The radio crackled again with Emily's voice. The seismic monitors are picking up something extraordinary. The wolves' vocalizations are creating patterns we've never recorded before. It's like they're using the cave system itself as some kind of acoustic instrument. The Alpha's pack members maintained their positions, but began a series of movements that seemed choreographed, each wolf knowing its exact role in what was clearly a ceremonial display. Their behavior supported Emily's most controversial theory, that wolves possessed a form of cultural memory that humans had failed to recognize. Through the stone walls came the fading sounds of the storm above, but it was overshadowed by something more immediate and profound. The wolves' coordinated howls had taken on a quality that seemed to resonate with the very rocks around them, creating harmonics that made the ancient markings appear to shimmer in Ethan's flashlight beam. The notebook's detailed observations now served as evidence of what had been missed, signs of a complex social and cultural system that went far beyond traditional understanding of wolf behavior. Marcus had documented the mechanics while completely missing the meaning, focusing on exploitation rather than understanding. Emily's latest message carried a tone of wonder. The vibration patterns we're recording match ancient seismic data from this region. These wolves aren't just making noise, they're recreating something that's been part of this landscape for thousands of years. What you're witnessing is proof of something we never dared to hypothesize. The ancient chamber resonated with the harmonious howls of dozens of wolves, their voices creating patterns that seemed to dance with the shadows on the walls. The Alpha, though still injured, stood with renewed strength among its kin, its eyes reflecting a wisdom that transcended mere animal instinct. The gathering had transformed the space into something beyond a simple cave. It had become a living connection to an ancient past. Emily's voice cut through on the radio with crystal clarity. "Ethan, what you're witnessing is unprecedented. The park's acoustic sensors are recording harmonic patterns that match indigenous legends about wolf ceremonies. These aren't just random gatherings. They're preserving something that dates back to the earliest human settlements in this region." The cubs in their carrier had fallen into a peaceful calm, their earlier fear replaced by an almost reverent attention to the proceedings around them. The rescued cub, though still nursing its injury, seemed to draw strength from the ceremony, its tiny form alert and engaged with the energy filling the chamber. A new message illuminated Ethan's phone screen. Marcus's operation is completely shut down. We've recovered years of documentation, but what he was really looking for, what he failed to understand, is exactly what you're seeing now. The Northern Pack wasn't just special because of their intelligence. They're the guardians of something far more profound. The notebook's weight in Ethan's pack seemed to lessen as its contents were transformed from evidence of exploitation into proof of something magnificent. Where Marcus had seen patterns to manipulate, he had missed the true miracle. A living tradition that connected modern wildlife to ancient partnerships between species. The Alpha moved with deliberate grace toward a section of the chamber where the wall markings formed intricate spiral patterns. Other wolves shifted their positions smoothly, maintaining the ceremonial formation while creating a path. Their movements suggested this wasn't just an impromptu gathering, but a carefully preserved ritual. Emily's research notes had always hinted at the possibility of something like this. The Northern Pack's behavior suggests they're not just adapting to their environment, she had written. They're maintaining something, a cultural heritage that we've been too blind to recognize. The gathered wolves continued their harmonious howling, but now individual voices began to emerge and fade in patterns that couldn't be coincidental. The acoustic effect transformed the chamber into something like a natural amphitheater, each note resonating with the ancient markings on the walls. Through the radio came Emily's excited analysis. The vibration patterns matched geological records from thousands of years ago. These wolves aren't just making noise. They're recreating sounds that have echoed through these mountains since before recorded history. This is what Marcus missed in all his research. The Alpha's pack members moved in synchronized patterns that spoke of generations of inherited knowledge. Each wolf knew its place, its role, in this ancient ceremony. Their behavior confirmed Emily's theories about cultural transmission among wolf populations, but went far beyond anything she had documented. The storm above had begun to fade, its fury replaced by the more profound energy emanating from within the cave system. The wolves' ceremony had taken on a rhythm that seemed to pulse through the very rocks, creating harmonics that made the air itself feel alive with ancient power. The notebook that had documented Marcus's betrayal now served a different purpose. Proof of the extraordinary relationship between humans and wolves that he had failed to understand. His detailed observations would now help protect rather than exploit these remarkable creatures. Emily's latest transmission carried a tone of reverence. The satellite thermal imaging is extraordinary. Wolf packs from across the park are still arriving, following routes that aren't on any of our maps. They're not just gathering randomly. They're responding to something we're only beginning to understand. This changes everything we thought we knew about wolf society and their relationship with humans. The rescued cub had begun to show signs of healing, as if the ceremony itself was having some effect on its recovery. The other cubs watched with increasing alertness, their young minds absorbing an ancient tradition that would one day be theirs to maintain. They were witnessing their own heritage, a legacy of trust and protection that had survived countless generations. The first rays of dawn penetrated the cave system through hidden fissures, creating a natural light show that danced with the ancient wall markings. The storm had passed, leaving behind a pristine blanket of snow above ground. The alpha wolf stood proudly among its pack members, its injury now properly treated by Emily's expert care after their successful emergence from the cave system. Emily's voice carried clearly through the crisp morning air as she addressed the gathered park rangers. What we've documented here goes beyond anything in modern wildlife research. The Northern Pack hasn't just survived in these mountains. They've maintained an ancient tradition of partnership with humans that we'd forgotten. Marcus's attempt to exploit them has inadvertently led to our greatest discovery. The cubs, now safely reunited with their pack, played under the watchful eyes of their extended family. The rescued cub, its legs skillfully bandaged by Emily, showed remarkable recovery, its resilience a testament to the extraordinary events they had witnessed in the sacred chamber. Ethan's phone contained hundreds of photographs and recordings from the cave ceremony, each one adding to the growing body of evidence about wolf intelligence and cultural preservation. The acoustic patterns we recorded, Emily explained, match ancient petroglyphs found throughout this region. These wolves aren't just intelligent animals. They're the custodians of a legacy that predates our national parks. The notebook that had documented Marcus's betrayal now served a different purpose in Emily's hands. His detailed observations, meant for exploitation, will now help us protect these extraordinary creatures. The evidence we've gathered proves that wolves possess a cultural knowledge that deserves our deepest respect and protection. The Alpha's pack had seamlessly integrated with other wolf families, their coordinated movements suggesting a social structure far more sophisticated than previously understood. The ceremony in the cave had strengthened ancient bonds, not just between wolf packs, but between species that had once worked together in harmony. Park security had thoroughly dismantled Marcus's operation, discovering an extensive network that had threatened wolf populations across multiple national parks. But the true victory wasn't in stopping the poachers. It was in uncovering the profound legacy that the Northern Pack had protected for generations. Emily's research team had begun the delicate process of documenting the cave markings, working in careful partnership with the wolves who still maintained their ceremonial gatherings. "We're not just observing them anymore," she noted. "We're learning to be proper stewards of a tradition that never should have been forgotten." The Alpha's injury had healed remarkably well, its recovery aided by both modern veterinary care and the strength drawn from the ancient ceremony. The wolf's trust in Ethan had opened a door to understanding that would transform wildlife conservation forever. As the morning sun climbed higher, Ethan watched the wolves move through their territory with renewed freedom. The trust they had shown him wasn't just about survival. It was an invitation to rebuild a partnership that had once helped both species thrive. The Northern Pack had chosen to share their secret not out of desperation, but out of an ancient understanding that humans and wolves were meant to be allies, not adversaries. Emily's final report would reshape wildlife protection policies across the nation. "What we've witnessed here," she wrote, "isn't just about conservation. It's about recognizing and honoring a relationship between species that has existed since the dawn of time. The wolves never forgot, and now neither will we." The sacred chamber remained a protected secret, its location known only to those who had earned the wolves' trust. The ancient markings continued to tell their story, now protected by both human and wolf guardians who understood their true significance. As Ethan completed his final notes on the extraordinary events, he realized that this wasn't just another wildlife protection success story. It was the beginning of a new chapter in the relationship between humans and one of our oldest allies in the natural world. Dear listeners, you've just experienced an extraordinary tale of trust, protection, and ancient bonds rediscovered. This story of the Northern Pack and their human guardians reminds us that the natural world holds mysteries far deeper than we imagine. To continue exploring these amazing connections between humans and wildlife, we've prepared a special series of stories that delve into similar remarkable discoveries. Find them by clicking the link to your left. If this journey into Yellowstone's hidden world moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Join us in the comments to share your own thoughts about the incredible intelligence and cultural heritage of wolves. Every day, we bring you new stories that challenge our understanding of the natural world and our place in it. Stay tuned for more extraordinary tales of discovery and connection.